Sixers a winner. Flyers play tonight. Phillies hire their manager. And then there's the Eagles. Boy, here we go. 3-4 playing against Buffalo. 5-1. John McMullen, football at 4 at JF McMullen. He appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. John, and I see you tweeting about the ugliness at wide receiver for the Eagles. As weren't they number 1 ranked by Pro Football Focus to come in this unit? Weren't they the number 1 ranked unit in football preseason?
Yeah, offensively, yeah. Preseason, they ranked them number 1 at wide receiver. And you know what? Week 1, I think it was showing up as a number 1 level group. And it just tells you how precarious things can be in this league, because we talked a lot about the group as a whole, and I often brought up the fit and how the fit was perfect in that each guy handles his specific role. And all of a sudden, Deshaun Jackson goes out after the explosive week 1, and the fit is no longer there, and you have to put guys in positions they're not comfortable with and doing things they're not comfortable with. And all of a sudden, a perceived strength turns into really an ugly weakness.
Yeah, and as you tweeted out, the weakness is pretty glaring. I mean, 117 league-wide have played to be graded. Aguilar's rated 108, Hollins 112, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside 117. So it shows you the back end of this receiving core really not holding their weight. And how much of that is because those guys aren't good, or how much of that is because they're not in the right roles?
Well, I think it's a little of both. I mean, you know, Miles Sanders is 53rd of 53 running backs as well as a rookie. So part of that in JJ's category is being a rookie and ramping up and taking that big leap from the college level to the pro level. You would hope both of those guys would have hit the ground running a little bit better. But I also don't think you can overreact. You see the ceiling still for both players. And when things do ultimately slow down for them, I think they'll both end up being pretty good NFL players. So I'm not ready to throw them on the trash heap less than half a year into their rookie season. When you start talking about Nelson Aguilar in his 5th season, he's just not a very good receiver. I talk a lot about he's explosive in a manufactured touch standpoint, and when he is your 5th option or 6th option, which he would have been in the passing game if Deshaun was healthy, that's pretty good. But when he's miscast in a role where he's got to be a deep threat, he's got to be a number 2 receiver, he's not very good. And Mac Hollins, I mean, he's a special teams player. He's not even an NFL level receiver. So to bump those guys up, and I made the comparison a number of years ago when Jordy Nelson was at the prime of his career and he was an all-pro with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. He got hurt the one year, and what looked like the best receiving corps in the game took a significant hit as well for the same reason. Guys got bumped up, and they weren't the same players in different roles.
Can I get your opinion? Because I know a lot of people listening obviously value what your opinion is. Not to say that you're a personnel of talent evaluator greater than what the Eagles have. However, what about guys like Greg Ward, Markin, Michelle, like guys that were in here? You're telling me that Hollins, that he's a significant upgrade over those guys, or do you scratch your head and wonder why those guys like that haven't got a chance? I'm not telling you this isn't Paul Turner, like, hey, why aren't they playing this guy? But this is more like those guys have been productive when given the opportunity. But is Hollins just a better option than guys like that? Are those guys not even on their radar, or any other guy that was in here during camp? They had some other names in here.
Well, there's a couple ways you have to look at it. Physically, yes, he's a better option. He's 6'4", he's 220, he can run. He's everything you look for from a measurable standpoint as an NFL receiver. But there's more to it, and he's not a very good route runner. He doesn't play as physically as his body would indicate he could. But then on the on the latter part of that, they are Paul Turner. That's exactly what they are. People get excited by. Now, I'm not talking the same players, the same traits. I mean, Mark and Michelle is a much faster player than Paul Turner. Greg Ward is a shiftier player. But these are not NFL level receivers. These are practice squad level receivers. And if they're forced into action, could they make a play on occasion? Sure. I talk about that all the time with NFL players. Everybody can make a play. We just talked about Miles Sanders being ranked 33rd, 53rd of 53. He's made plenty of plays. You've seen Nelson Aguilar over his career make plenty of plays. But they're not good NFL players. They're not consistent NFL players. If you think Greg Ward is going to save this group, I mean, that's just not going to happen.
John, where do you think Doug go? What do you put your Doug Peterson hat on as he's planning this week for the Buffalo Bills with all the issues that you just spoke about? What do you think his number one objective is from a schematic standpoint?
Boy, I've been talking about it for a couple weeks now. Maximize what you do have. Maximize who is playing well. And to me, ever since Dallas Goedert has gotten healthy, they have shifted to being more of a 12 personnel team, and they should have. But it should be even more. It should be more. I mean, Dallas and Zach should be on the field basically every single down at this point. That's how poorly your other options are performing. So when Deshaun Jackson gets back, if he ever does get back, you can start going to more multiple formations and doing some of the things you want to do. But to me, this coaching staff as a whole is pounding the square peg in the round hole or vice versa. Dallas is playing well. Yes, he fumbled, and that really hurt the team in Dallas. But if you look at him on film, play to play, he's been one of the top 10 tight ends in this league, arguably better than Zach Ertz as an all-around tight end. So why aren't those two guys on the field consistently? And to me, I think it was 59% against Dallas. Now, that was a little because it was such a blowout. There were some fourth quarter snaps with a bunch of the backups that kind of skew that. So generally it's been about 70% for Dallas being on the field, but it should be even more. I don't want Matt Collins on the field. And the Eagles should understand that. The Eagles should realize it. And if they don't want to play J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, that's what they should do. Similar in the backfield. It should be Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard is effective as a running back. Miles Sanders is not. Now, I'm not saying don't take out the package you have for Miles in the passing game, but that's what he is at this point. He is a player you need to use judiciously in certain spots, and it involves the passing game. I think the Eagles have to take advantage of what they have.
Taking advantage of what they have, and I think Carson did that plenty last year with his connection to Zach Ertz, and we talked about that at great lengths, and arguably he targeted him too much. What are your thoughts on that duo so far this season? Because it's much more quiet. I mean, I know that's a result of the offense as a whole, but it doesn't seem like he's forcing the ball to him, and now it's almost like maybe he should.
Well, I don't think he forced the ball to him last year. I think Zach was pretty much always open, so if you're open, you're going to get the football. I think teams have adjusted to that and are trying to take him away. I think it started with Detroit, and if you think about Matt Patricia and his history and where he came from, and what do the Patriots do? They try to take away your top threat on offense and make lesser players beat you. And that's sort of what the Lions did, and they bracketed Zach Ertz a lot. And I think you see that more and more, and people are saying, okay, Zach's not going to beat us. These other guys who are not performing, we're going to force them to beat us. And I think that's a really good strategy, to be honest. And Doug mentioned, I think it was Mike Groh, actually, you mentioned one of the two. The first 7 or 8 pass plays, Zach was either the first or second option in Dallas. They just couldn't get him the football. Hey, this offense is struggling as a whole, and the fact that people understand there's only a couple guys who can beat you, it's hurting this team.
John, what do you think about? I saw your tweet, and I was laughing at it, that you can't wait till the trade deadline is over, and I know it's because everybody wants everybody right now. But the Eagles are in a weird situation here, right? Because Manish Mehta of the Daily News reports that Robbie Anderson is on the trade market. The Eagles had interest in him last year. We know that. He can fill in that speed role, but they've got this Deshaun thing looming. I don't know how long they can wait with a deadline, I think, next week, right? Where even if Deshaun plays one game, they can't be convinced that he could play 6 or 7 more. So where do you think that they are with that? Do they just kind of go on a whim or really trust him a one-game evaluation of Deshaun, and that's if he plays?
Yeah, and I don't think he's going to play. I mean, he was not able to practice again today. And if you think about how long it's been since the early stages of week 2, I find it hard to believe they're going to put him back on the field unless he can get a full week of practice. I just think that's the way it's going to go. So this has lingered and lingered and lingered. And you're right, Jeff, they have to make a decision by Tuesday. So do you need a speed receiver? Well, you don't if Deshaun Jackson is out there. In fact, it's not going to help you at all, because if Deshaun is healthy and he's ready to go, Robbie Anderson isn't going to play. He isn't going to help you. He isn't going to do other things. So there's going to be that redundancy you had last year when they traded for Golden Tate along with Nelson Aguilar, both being essentially slot receivers. So it kind of leans on the medical, and nobody really knows what the heck is going on with Deshaun Jackson. I've talked to independent doctors who they've tried to avoid. The Eagles have tried to avoid sports hernia talk, and if you think about they say it's a tear of the abdomen. By definition, a sports hernia is a tear in the lower abdomen or groin. You can have a tear in the abdomen in the six-pack area, which is not a sports hernia. But if you remember, Jeff, you go all the way back to the Eagles and how they designated the injury first. Before they said it was a torn abdomen, they said it was a groin injury. And if it is a groin injury, it's a sports hernia. And guess what? They recommended surgery, and Deshaun refused and wanted to go in a different direction. It would have been 4 to 6 weeks if he had surgery. And we're already at that stage. And
now,
like
what did Doug say yesterday about that? That they said we wouldn't have played it any differently. He's about where we thought. Is that BS?
Yeah, it's BS. I mean, from the standpoint of putting him on injured reserve, look, he would have been out 8 weeks. And to me, that's not the issue, because the mechanics of the roster move, yeah, you could have used another player, you could have used another body, but they don't have anybody to replace Deshaun Jackson. So that, to me, is not the issue. That's sort of white noise. The bigger issue is, if you know he's going to be out a specific amount of time, maybe you make a move earlier for a player that was available. That could have actually helped you. But now we're at this stage, and they keep saying he's close. And he is closer. He's out on the field now, stretching with the team. So he clearly is closer. And now they have this difficult decision. Do we go out and waste draft capital on a receiver just in case? I don't know if you can do that.
How are the Eagles, when talking about the injuries and they're bringing these new D tackles in, how's the defensive line going to hold up this week? Is there any new rotations? And just fill us in on the new guys we're going to be seeing and how you expect that to play out.
Well, they're certainly, they only have 3 healthy defensive tackles, and 2 have never played an NFL game before. So you can move Brandon Graham inside. Yeah, I mean, and they certainly will in the nickel. So in the pass rush, that's the way they've been going about it, and they'll continue to do it. But somebody like Anthony Rush, who was here part of the offseason, so at least knows the defense, big 350-pound guy. I think they're going to try to use him as an early down run stuffer, and then bring Brandon on as the pass rusher in those types of situations. Obviously, it's not optimal. You go into a game where you got to rely on Rush and also Albert Huggins, who also hasn't played an NFL game before. Yeah, it's tough, but that's what happens. I mean, they're not down Malik Jackson. They're not down Malik Jackson and Tim Jernigan. Malik Jackson, Tim Jernigan, Hassan Ridgeway, and they had to cut Akeem Spence because he was on skates all night in Dallas. I mean, that's just bad luck.
John McMullen, football at 4. Of course, you hear it every day here, talking a little NFL, little Eagles. Now, I would imagine that it's not like Howie's going to be making multiple deals, right? I mean, can you envision a scenario where he gets a corner, a D-tackle, and a wide receiver? Or is he kind of got to get fixated on one or the other?
Well, I mean, Doug kind of mentioned that the biggest need now, which is funny because all people have talked about is corner and receiver, but the corners are getting healthier. Ronald Darby will be back this week. Jalen was back. Avonte Maddox, Pravon LeBlanc are right around the corner. I think they can cobble that together. We just talked about receiver if Deshaun comes back. So Doug is now focused on the defensive line. Could he make 2 deals? Sure. I can't imagine he can make 3 deals, but he also has to enter the equation. Is this team really a contender now? You have to look at it that way as well. I mean, when this started, they projected themselves, and I think rightfully so. I certainly did. I think most people did, as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. You got to self-scout. You got to revisit that now that you're at the trade deadline and say, are we really that close to turning this thing around? And I think a big part of it is winning Sunday. If they lose Sunday, I don't know if you make any deal, to be honest.
That's interesting because we've all thought maybe the waiting process is to see how Deshaun responds or how the defensive tackle situation shapes up with Jernigan, in that being an influence on whether they make a move, not necessarily if they lose another game. That would be – I don't think that would go over well in Philadelphia if they became sellers or didn't make any move and kind of came out and said that, John. And I understand your viewpoint there, but I can't even imagine them –
why wait?
I can't imagine them feeling that way, even if they lost another game.
Well, I don't think they're going to say it. I just think they have to be realistic.
Well, they're going to have to defend it, though. If when people ask Doug after the deadline, why didn't you guys make any moves, what happened, it's going to be pretty obvious that was their mindset.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, you just spin it and say we couldn't get anything done, and everybody forgets about it pretty quickly. I do think, a big part of it is how healthy are guys. I just mentioned corner. The fact that guys are getting healthier shifts things away from that position. If Jernigan is able to get back, and he's been stretching with the team as well, that would be very, very helpful. But I still think they need another body at defensive tackle. One of the issues there is when you sign guys off other practice squads, though, you got to keep them for 3 weeks. So Rush and Huggins are here for 3 weeks at minimum. So you have to add that in as well. And Deshaun, I think receiver as a whole, I've said consistently, has everything to do with Deshaun's health. You're not looking for a speed threat if Deshaun Jackson can get back out there, because there's no speed threat that's going to be as good as Deshaun Jackson. So there's no need in getting that.
Well, we obviously know that Howie Roseman is not afraid to pull the trigger on a deal. It's just, what do the Eagles have? What are they willing to give up? Does he want to part with draft picks? Is it a player? At this stage of the game, we have just a couple of days left, the 29th, 5 days from now. So the Eagles will play a game against Buffalo and maybe figure out, are we 4-4 and in this thing, or are we 3-5 and not? Could it be as simple as the result of this game on Sunday gives Howie Roseman his motivation? We'll find out. John McMullen, Football at 4, right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
John, what'd you think about the Sixers game last night? Maybe the Eagles could use Matisse at corner.
Well, they can. Well, I don't think they need a corner. As I said, I think they can cobble it together. I think
D-tackle.
Sixers are going to be really good in the regular season. That's not the question. The question is, are they built for the playoffs? I don't know if they're built for the playoffs because they're going to need shooting at some point.
Well, you might be right about that, but in this East, you might not need to shoot.
Well, I'm talking about the whole enchilada, Mike.
Right. Yeah, well,
but there's plenty of time to go out and get a shooter, as we know, and there'll be not only the trade market in the NBA, but you also have the buyout market. There's a lot of ways you can bring players in. And all you have to do is look at their starting lineup at the beginning of last year. Things change a lot in the NBA. There's a lot of moving parts.
Mark Jackson said yesterday 60 to 65 wins. Taking the over?
I put on my prediction. I put people are going to be angry, as they usually are at me. I put 53 in an Eastern Conference Finals loss.
All right.
That's my prediction.
There you
At least
go.
they made it to the finals.
That's fair. Yeah.
Eastern Conference Finals loss.
Yeah, that would be new for them.
Yeah, that would be one step further than last year, but probably a disappointment to many. John McMullen's back tomorrow. Football at 4. Tonight, the Screw is out at Screwballs for countdown to kickoff. Although I don't know if Tony Bruno is going to be making it tonight. I got some.
I think Tony's laid up.
Yeah, I got pictures of him in the hospital.
Wouldn't be the first time
He's in the
done a
blue
show from
tent.
hospital.
Yeah. All right, John. We'll talk to you tomorrow, pal.
All right, thank you, guys.